Morning to all of you, and I'm glad to see you today. It is late July and early August is coming, and this is when everybody's on the road, so it's good to see those of you still here. We had a big crowd out at Lakeshore as usual. It's been a busy week around here. Actually, it's kind of slow, and it's really nice. And the main thing that's happening, and I won't pick up my leg and do something silly and show you, but do you know what's coming this week? I have on my red, white, and blue socks. It is the Olympics, which I absolutely adore. So, and I have 30-something pair, and I wear a pair of those every day. So I change them out. So it's going to be a great week ahead. You know, today is just a perfect story, and this story is just classic of Mark. So maybe this is a little teaching, but I hope it's helpful. But, you know, Mark, as I've preached over the last weeks here and out at Lakeshore, is just so simple and intends to send a message of Jesus being a simple story. But then within that simplicity, that story speaks to our complexities, if that makes sense. And it's as simple as this. Mark shows us Jesus doing things and teaching. And that's about it. He does things and then he teaches. And today is no exception. And that simplicity of doing and teaching really then touches us if we'll listen, leads us if we'll let it. So look at the story a little bit. It is so concise. I mean, it's one sentence long about what's happening. And it's easy to just transition over it. And you'll notice I left the next part of the story out because it just keeps shifting. The disciples have been really busy. And in fact, the Greek says something like, there's so many people coming and going and coming and going, that they can't get a break. And it's hard for us to imagine because we want to make it this idyllic scene and it's peaceful ride and quiet. And it's like being in the Atlanta airport for them. I mean, you just stand back and get out of the way. And here they are on the Sea of Galilee. There's fishermen, many of them. And they're rowing across to this hillside. So catch that, to get a break, to get kind of a rest. And what happens? They look up and there is a crowd already forming again. So they're not going to get a break. They think they're going to get a break. It's not going to happen. And that's when the story kicks in. Because see, Jesus says, no, wait, well, I'm not going there. Let's go over there instead. So he kind of takes them away a bit and gets them over to another shore. And they get out of the boats and he says, come on, guys. He said, you need to take a break. You need to rest. And notice that Jesus says he's not concerned about himself. He's concerned about them, which is always the right order for Jesus, right? And he says, look, you're so busy and worn out, you don't even have time to eat. You catch that? You can't even stop to take a break. He's not worried about himself. He is worried about them. And then he gives them a bit of a commandment, a bit of an instruction. What's he tell them to do? To rest. Simply to rest. This falls on deaf ears in America. And I promise you, you want to hear it, but you have a hard time hearing it, and I do too. Resting is not good in the Western United States, in the Western world. We are busy people. And often our busyness just catches every part of us to the point that when we're resting, we're busy. Our play begins to be work, and I can prove it to you. And some of my play seems to be work. And then I say to myself, oh, this is wonderful, until I'm exhausted, until you're exhausted. We don't rest well. It's okay, just admit it, don't get all hung up about it. Western peoples don't rest well. And Jesus is simply telling them to rest without a whole lot of other stuff. You see, it was true 2,000 years ago. People need to rest. They need to take a rest, to slow down, take a break, come to a stop. In other words, don't do something else. Do something, don't do anything. Just rest. But you know what? It's way deeper, because that's not really what Jesus is saying to them. He actually uses a different word. And this is technically exactly what he is saying. He says to them, Come over here, get out of the boat, and restore yourself. Restore yourself. Not the same as resting, is it? He's saying something deeper to them. And see, if you don't pay attention to Mark, it'll go right by you. You have to pay attention with Mark. He is speeding along. Come over to the hillside and restore yourself. See, he knows they're exhausted. In other words, they're done. They're not going to be of any use to anybody else. And they need to pause, to take an intentional pause and rest and catch their break. But more, he's saying to them what? What's it sound like to you? It's more like for me, look, stop. It's like getting your child's face in your hands. Please stop. Just stop. Stop. Just stop and restore. You know, restore themselves for a lot ahead. He knows that. The crowds are not going to get smaller. They're going to get larger until they do get smaller. And what does Jesus say about the crowds? He's not mean about them. He says they're like sheep without a shepherd. And you know why he's telling them to rest and restore? Because the shepherds will not be Jesus. The future will be that the shepherds will be the disciples. They're going to be busy all the time with people. Have you ever needed to rest? I bet. But more deeply, have you needed a time that you needed to restore yourself? That you were at that place you had to restore yourself in order to go forward? So that's a different matter. You know, some years ago, I had a young man call me. He sat in these pews. He came to early church. He called me and said, "Hey, can I come by and chat?" And I said, "Sure, come on by." And he had a great job. He was working in the boat industry down at Loudon. Had a super job. I mean, really super. He was extremely competent. His future was nothing but a power climb. He's making a lot of money. He was very successful. And so when he sat down, I kind of wondered why he came to see me. And I said, "Well, how are things?" He said, "They're great." And he started listing all the great stuff. And I mean, it was great. And he's a great guy. And he said, I love it. I'm making great money. I know so much. I'm learning so much. I can stay in this industry. I have a great job. But, and then he stopped. And I didn't say a word. I let that but just hang in the air a minute. Just let that just sit there. Let him hear himself. And he didn't say anything for a long time. He was quiet. And truthfully, I want to tell you, I don't do this often. Well, I probably do it more than I should, being an extrovert. But I heard something in my mind, and I said it. I just said it. I said, "Tell me something while we're sitting here. If you could do really anything in the world, what would it be that you would do?" I wonder where those words came from. And when I looked up, he had tears in his eyes. Whoa. I said, "So what's that about?" He said, "You may not know this about me, but," he said, "when I was growing up, I had learning difficulties, really extreme learning difficulties, and I had a lot of help. And in those days, the help wasn't very good. As I got older, it was better when I got to college. I was in college forever trying to get out. My parents thought, I wasn't trying. And then we realized, I just needed extra help. And then when I got the tools, I got better. I got my degree. I've got this great life." And he said, "I've looked around when I was in school and even now, and I see all those students like me who need somebody to help them. To help them with the same problems I had." I said, "Reed, I don't know what to say, but one of the learnings I have by listening to people, and it's helped me, is I'm way concerned at my age now about the things I did or didn't do, all that list of stuff that I feel guilty about and bad about. You know what I think mostly about? I think about the things in life that I could have done and didn't do. And they're with me all the time." I said, "But you'll figure it out. You'll come to the right answer. Take a little time. You want to chat again, do that." I don't know. We chatted for a little bit. He said, "Well, thanks." He said, "I just need to say some of that." I said, "Okay, good, okay." About 6 weeks later, he quit his job and went back to the university and got a degree in counseling and trained. He's an expert about helping students with learning difficulties. And he's now at the University of Arkansas and has a great job and absolutely loves his life. Now, the reason I tell you his story so that it will touch your story. Not his story, what is your story of being restored or needing to be restored? And is it now? Right now. Those are real moments. You see, Jesus, it sounds like he's saying, hey, take a break, catch your breath, have a Coca-Cola. He's saying something deeper to the disciples for what's about to start. Because you know the next thing Jesus is going to do is that little miracle that speed shifted everything. He's going to feed like 5,000 people with a little bit of food. You see, we all have that place that we need to be restored. It's okay. And if it's kind of a for you right now, that's the right feeling. Not kidding. I may not be speaking, but to a few of you, if that was an hang on to the Like, man, I need that. We've all been there. It's not a bad thing. You see, in our lives, in the Western world, the reason we're so busy is because all the stuff we've learned, all the things we've done, all the things accomplished, all the accolades we've gotten, all the money that we've made, all the things that we can move and do with our authority, don't do anything when you're at that place. Oh, that was an exaggeration. They'll do a little bit, but they won't get you where you need to go. But you'll keep trying, and I will too. I'll do it again. And I'll still having that, you know, things are great, but we need to be restored. And you see, that's a spiritual thing, a really deeply spiritual thing. So they're there on the hillside, out in the nature, and Jesus is speaking very deeply and very personally to them about something inside of themselves. Because Jesus knows, and I bet you do, you're not going to restore yourself. Let me try that again. You're not going to restore yourself. It is God who will restore you. You see, it's God who helps us find ourselves when we cannot find ourselves. It is God helps us to know ourselves when I look in the mirror and I can't figure out who I'm looking at. It is God who helps us recognize ourselves at those times. It is the God who pushes, nudge, pulls us over the hill when, you know what, just can't climb the hill anymore. I know that somewhere. Today, Jesus reminds us. I don't want this too heavy, but I want you to lean into it a bit. Don't run from it. Let's us slow down in that. That's why we come here to this magnificent space. Never do I not pause, stand here in the late afternoon and it's empty, and I stand and look at those windows and I get that little bit of need to catch my deep breath. Need to breathe in a little more of what's around. See, God is the one who will help you get in touch with that essential core in yourself that reestablishes the lifeline to you. Do you think you're looking for something outside yourself to help you find purpose and meaning and value and principle? Help us to return to the things that are the most important thing in life. To say it simply, to be restored by God is to find you. Remember the spiritual wisdom in the church? I have known it since forever, and I promise I'll be quiet. I've heard it since I was a little boy. And when I was a little boy, I didn't know what it meant. It's Isaiah 55, and I've heard it a million times in the Episcopal Church. Seek the Lord while he wills to be found. Call upon him while he is near. And when I was a child, I thought, Young adult thought, And then I began to hear it. You see, when we seek, we will find the one who is always searching and seeking you and me for our entire lives. Always has and always will. So I'd say take a little rest today. By the way, it is the Sabbath. That's what Sunday was made for. before we got so busy. Take a little rest. That's really important. But maybe do something that restores you. And I'm not going to tell you what that is because you probably have an idea. What is that? It may seem small, but don't miss that the smallness of it is important to you. Take a hike, take a walk by yourself, get outdoors, be with a friend, maybe go to your book club. Again, those things seem so small, but they are restorative. They restore us. They bring us back to something that's very deep and important. And I would say maybe really and truly find a little silence. Maybe just a touch of silence. Maybe we can and you can find a way to block the voices, that constant barrage of silly, anxious commentary that our world is coming to an end. Jesus thought the world was going to continue in God's good care. He believed in the power of God to restore all things, and your life and mine, at any point, at any time. To be restored. Maybe one of us, many of us will be restored today or tomorrow, but it'll be there. So Jesus is calling you, pull your boat up to the shore, get out, sit down. Take a rest. And then seek, and you won't, maybe you will. You'll find God who is always trying to find you. Amen.